Welcome to the Shivan Library. Northstar Cup 6 has just started and we are playing Atlantic Old School. We don't usually play Atlantic around these parts, so it was a nice change of pace from our usual Swedish tournaments. Now, I had to think long and hard about what I wanted to play this time. There were so many good different decks that I wanted to try out, but I knew I had to do something that actually takes advantage of fallen empires. So, playing something like the deck or DFB Green was basically out of the question here. So, what was my deck of choice? It's White Weenie, a deck I haven't had the pleasure of playing myself in a long time. This is the list I'm running, and it was built with the slight metagame aspect in mind. As this was the first time in a good while since we've played anything that allowed fallen empires, I assumed people wanted to play those hymn to Thorax and goblin grenades, so let's play something that works well against those decks. The deck runs 4 White Knights and 4 Order of Labors, which both have protection from black from those hymn matchups, and in addition to those, I put in 2 Repentant Blacksmiths for that protection from red. I do believe the Blacksmith is heavily underplayed creature, as one of the most common removal spells in Old School is Lightning Bolt. Sure, it doesn't do much against Mishra's Factory, but it can easily hold off some of the more aggressive red attackers. Then we have some of the more common small white creatures to fill out the ranks. Benalish Hero and Mesa Pegasi for that lovely banding. Savannah Lions for the punching power, Icatian Javelinier just because I can play them, and the Solitary Serra Angel if we need to go big. To get the most out of these creatures, I'm running a full set of Crusades. I've always liked how strong the effect is, especially when you get multiples down. Even your worst creature become haymakers at that point. For the surprise factor, I slotted in 2 Army of Allahs if the boards get wide. They can often deal a lot of extra damage, and people don't always remember that white actually does have an instant speed buff. As for the board control, we got the basics down with Disenchants, Swords to Plowshares, and a single Wrath of God. Land Tax and Armageddon also fits this deck really well, as I generally start with a very low land count, and even blowing up 3 lands from my opponents can be enough to win the game. For the rest of the deck, in the artifact slot, we have the White Mox, Lotus, and Chaos Orb, and the basic lands are rounded out with Strip Mines and 2 Mishra's Factories. Even though the factories would really work well in a creature deck like this one does require so much white mana, which may cause problems when your land count is already so low. So I took the safe route and cut the playset in half. As for the sideboard, we got Circle of Protection for the colors I expected to see the most, Karma for those black decks, some extra artifact and enchantment removal, extra creature removal, and then there's the fun stuff. Eye for an Eye and Reverse Damage are cards that I've always loved, but get to use them so rarely. Sure, Reverse Damage no longer works as well as it did before, as now you need to play it beforehand, and if the source stays the same, you only can reverse 1 instance of damage. With the original wording, you could have reversed all damage from, for example, Rocket Launcher, and get it all back before dying. Now you only get the next damage reversed. This and Eye for an Eye are still good against decks that deal a lot of damage at once. Fireball, Force of Nature's Colossus of Sardia, and even just an Urnam Djinn. Either get it back as life or deal it right back to them. Both are good in a race, in different ways. And that's about it. Let's see if this deck can sneak under my opponents, or are we going to get run over by something much bigger than us. But before we head down the tables, take a second to like the video and subscribe for more old school content. Both are really helpful, and I've been so grateful for all the wonderful people who have helped this channel grow. And it is game number 1. I'm down a card at the mulligan down to 6, and my opponent gets to start. City of Brass, so we are looking at some kind of multicolored, probably a controlish deck, but a Savannah Lions on turn 1 is a good way to start when you're playing with weenies. And And of course, there's the kind of big enemy of the Seven Lions, the Mishra's factory. But at this point, like, trading with my first threat and getting a land out of them would probably be good. Okay, sure, they are all tapped out, so no blocks this turn. And next turn they will probably get to buff it, so we are not gonna be seeing a good trade for me. But the land tax is gonna be quite helpful here. Seeing now that my opponent is playing a multicolored deck, looking at the Felwa Stone and the City of Brass, they're probably going to be laying down quite a lot of lands here. So the odds are high that I get to thin out basically every single basic out of my deck, so I can just get gas and nothing else. Opponent is just passing the turn without dropping a land, which, yeah, in a way it's good. I don't get to get the land tax trigger, but at least I know that they're not building their board. And a strip mine for the factory clears the way for the lion to come swinging in. And let's see what kind of extra buff we're getting. A second lion as well. The pressure is building up, and I have a 4-turn clock, and their land is going to be doing a damage to them as well. So the situation is looking really good at this point. Sure, we are expecting to see maybe a Wrath, maybe more Swords to Plowshares kind of stuff. I'm not expecting these lions to live very long, but for now, the situation is looking really good. Mishra activation as well. Let's start dealing as much damage as we can as quickly as possible. The second City of Brass was definitely not the land my opponent wanted to see, but well, at least they get their colors right, but the damage may become a big issue quite quickly here. And another land coming in, and it is a strip mine. Okay, so that means my factory is not gonna be long for this world, but at least I get my land tax activation now. And let's start thinning out the deck. That's 3 basics. I can take basically everything I want right now. I have only 3 cards in my hand before this, and getting the draw for the turn takes me up to 7. So I can quite safely start playing out cards. And at this point, I guess playing lands is a good option. The land tax triggers, yeah, those are really good, but my opponent is probably going to be playing lands as well, so I doubt that's going to be big of an issue. The tax triggers are going to be coming in. And there goes my factory. Are we going to see some kind of a board swipe here? Because my opponent is basically dead on board if it doesn't do anything. So what do we get? Mishra's factory, not the land I wanted to see, seeing that the only strip mine in my deck has already been used on the earlier factory. And yeah, there's the Wrath of God, and the board is clean. Now it's time to start rebuilding and getting that pressure back up. Yeah, no land tax trigger now. I could have taken it, but I believe I do want maybe a few lands in there as well. And there's the second land tax as well, so next turn, if I want, I can just pop out pretty much 6 lands. I am assuming my opponent does want to play a land. Let's see, yeah, there it is. There's the basic plains. Basic plains for them, and the Mishra is coming in. Yeah, I'm in no hurry with that one. I'm at 18 life still, so I can easily take the damage. And my opponent is down to 3. And this is the point where those City of Brasses will become a real issue, because they have 4 lands right now, and 2 of those is basically... those are going to be killing them faster than I am. So it is highly likely that they won't be tapped, at least, well, maybe 1, maybe 2, but the third one is lethal. So yeah, they won't get much out of the Felwa Stone. Sure, it seems that they are heavily on white, so at least it is basically a white mox at this point. But no other colors can be really used here. Sure, if they do find something like Demonic Tutor or other powerful stuff like that, yeah, they will be using the City of Brasses at that point. The factory is coming in again. I don't think I need any more lands at this point. I can just quite freely play them out. I've been thinning my deck enough for now that this won't become an issue. I'm at the point where I'm drawing gas basically every single turn. And there's the sword for the factory. Let's get that one out so it won't be dealing too much damage in the long run. And I do have those swords in hand, so I have to use them somewhere. Another land for my opponent. And what do I have? I got my own factory here, which is probably one of the better cards I could have drawn. It dodges all sorcery speed removal, but the unfortunate thing, of course, is that it will die to a disenchant if they have one. They have not. My opponent hasn't used disenchants yet to get rid of the land tax, or at least the first land tax when it was relevant. So I'm not assuming they have those in hand, but they do have a Serra Angel, which could be a problem. But like I said, I have the swords in hand, so I have to use them somewhere. That gained them 4 lives, which means that now the City of Brasses can be used a bit more freely, but at least it got rid of one of the few threats, which buys me quite a lot of time. With them nearly tapped out, the factory can quite freely attack, and now all I have to do is get a few good swings in and the game is over. And let's see if they can respond in kind. Mishra's factory for my opponent, and a second Felwa Stone. So the situation is looking quite nice. As long as that factory has Summoning Sickness, I'm quite free to trade with it. For now, I just need to get some damage in, make sure they do not have blockers, and I'm quite sure that I will be attacking with the factory, because if I can kill it now this turn, the pumping ability won't be such a big deal. But then again, I drew Crusade, which kind of took care of that problem. The White Knight will now easily get past the factory. But yeah, I'm still willing to do the trade if they want to, just so I can get as much damage through as I can whenever I want. And yeah, the factory is activated and they will be trading. My opponent goes down to 3 lives, that's 1 hit from the White Knight and nearly from every creature at this point now that the Crusade is in play. Sure, the Mesa Pegasus and Banalish Hero won't be dealing enough, but White Knight's Order of Late Burst, those are all lethal immediately. And now my opponent is pretty much looking at a very dangerous situation here. They have to find an answer to every single threat I'm playing, and I don't really want to be playing multiple threats at once. So every single creature I get, I'm basically playing them down, attacking with them. If they can remove it, then play another one, just so that the Wrath of Gods won't be as useful here, basically turning them into 1-to-1 removal. And yeah, my opponent's going for a Fireball. This is hurting them as well. Now they're down to 2, now every single threat in my deck is lethal immediately. And there's another one, Order of Late Burn. And I do not want to bring anything else down at this point. I just want to get that final strike in. And did my opponent have anything? Yeah, there's the Wrath of God. And this is exactly what I was talking about. Now, if I had deployed more threats they would have all been wiped out at this point. So it's just safe to bring in that one single threat and try to get it through all the way. And for example, okay, Repentant Blacksmith and an Armageddon. If they can't do anything about this, I think it's game right there. And yeah, could not use those City of Brasses with the life total they have. And I get to just play an extra planes for next turn. I don't care about the land taxes anymore. I just want to deal damage quickly. Mishra's Factory for my opponent, and yeah, it just has to jump block at this point. Repentant Blacksmith is already 2-3, so that's a safe hit. Another order of Lightbow in, just to make sure that this time the damage gets through. And yes, my opponent's picking up their graveyard. It is game 1 for the Weenies. And it is game number 2. I'm on the draw again and had to mulligan my first hand. But usually, as it is, White Weenie can operate with a very low card count. And when you start with the land tax, things are looking really good. You know you can get those missing land drops every time, especially now that I am on the draw. Opponent with the planes and anything. Oh no, yeah. Immediate disenchant for the land tax. That was a nasty but kind of thing you would expect from a control player. They do have to remove it immediately. Otherwise, I can just thin out my deck, get every single land drop, and make sure that I'm just drawing gas all the time. The White Knight, that's a good start as well here. I can start pushing in some damage while the coast is still very much clear. A City of Brass on my opponent and a Felwa Stone. Yeah, at this point they're just making sure they have all the mana they need. And as they saw the Armageddon in game 1, those artifact sources are going to be extremely useful and something they do want to see basically every single time. Crusade, so we get the night theme going on strong here, swinging for 3, dropping my opponent down to 17 and getting this White Weenie train on track. Let's see if my opponent can deal with my threats now. Yeah, no problem with the lands. They're getting good drops every turn. They now have basically everything they probably will be needing. Double blue, white from 2 sources, and then the City of Brass as the rainbow land as well. The knight is swinging in. They're already down to 14 lives. Now the good question is, do I want to deploy more creatures? Is there a Wrath incoming, or do I just want to start dropping down them 1 creature at a time like I wanted to do in game number 1? Because yeah, they do have the double white available, so Wrath is highly likely. If they do run a couple in the main board, I'm assuming they're going to be bringing more in from the side, but balance is a good start. We both have now 4 cards in hand. They're going to have to take down 1 land. I lose the creature, so kind of fair trade in that sense. It is kind of funny to see like the situation where opponent has to use a balance to get rid of 1 of my creatures. And balance is quite risky when you're playing against the Weenie decks, just because they can usually get their hand out like really quickly. And yeah, now we get to see the blue card as well. There's a counter spell for my Order of Lightbow. But I can pretty much get my hand empty, and casting a balance would probably mean just, yeah, you lose 1 land, you lose 1 or 2 cards, and I lose a creature. So that trade becomes worse and worse all the time. Jem'Day Tome for my opponent and Savannah Alliance for me. The Tome is really good for them. Now they can start getting that card advantage going, but it also means that they have to invest a lot of mana into it, which is something they currently do not have that much. The Desert, yeah, that's a card that could be a problem, but luckily I have the Crusade in, so the Lions won't be dying just yet. And more mana rocks for my opponent. Now what do we do? Of course we're going to be swinging in, that's guaranteed. Dropping them down to 11. That's 4 turns of swings, and where do I want to go from here? Black Lotus doesn't really do much for me. At this point I could have already cast basically everything I have. The Serra Angel is the only expensive spell in my deck, and it is decent in this matchup, but I would assume that it would get the swords immediately or entice my opponent to just cast the Wrath. But there's the second desert, and now we have a problem. Now my lions are dying if I don't get rid of those, so let's think about this now for a second. Yeah, crack the Lotus, float everything I have, and there's the Armageddon. If they do not have a counterspell now, this game is gonna be solidly mine. Yeah, drawing with the Tome, of course that means that even if they can counter it, the deserts are tapped for now. But did they get it? Nope. All lands are going and the coast is clear. And the lions are swinging in. And there's a slight little misplay. I hope I spot it later on here. Mana burn is in effect in North Star Cup tournaments, and I should have taken 2 points there. Now, is it gonna matter? Probably not, but it's better to play by the rules rather than just wing it here. The lions are swinging in. My opponent is getting their lands, but another city of brass, that's gonna be a problem for them. That's just 2 swings, and they... Oh, there's a decent chance for the Crusade. Now, it's yeah, good and bad. The 3 points of damage turned into 2 plus 1, so for now it was a safe bet, but is there anything for the lions? No, my opponent did not get anything, and the Weenies take the game 2-0, and boy, what a hand I had. And there we have it. Round 1 was a success. My opponent played a cool control deck, but the continuous pressure I was able to bring was enough to topple them over. In the first game, the land tax and crusades made it very easy to keep the pressure going, thinning out the lands and making sure that every single threat I played was able to punch hard was the key here. I have more creatures than they do have removal, so it was just a matter of time when their defenses were weakened enough so I could get the final blow in. In the second game, we saw the power of the Armageddon. When you can surprise your opponent, it is devastating. And I only had the Savannah Lions at that point, but that's all it took. If you can't rebuild quick enough, the damage will creep up. This was a good showing for the little guys. Let's see if I can keep the momentum going in the next round as well. Join me again next week for the second round of the North Star Cup 6, and we'll see who we are facing next. Thank you for visiting the Shivan Library.